Well, hello there, and welcome back. And thank you for joining me for part two of 75 No Doubt. So here we are. We've got a successful four-wheel drive business going really well. Packing backpackers on board with camping gear and send them on Fraser Island for 3 days, having the time of their lives. Most of them very good. Occasionally there's one that stepped out of line, but that's all right. We had deposits and so on and so on. But as we grew, we found we needed bigger premises. And what came up but a service station, petrol station, right next door to where the interstate bus stopped. So we thought, well, let's grab that. So we did. Didn't want a service station, but when we sent them out on Fraser Island, when we said, come back tonight, on the night you come back, would you please fill the petrol up in the vehicle? Well, that usually meant them driving around Harvey Bay trying to find a service station. And they usually found the one next door to the McDonald's. And that brought them back, usually late. So we thought, well, we'll fix that. They could come back and fill up at the same service station that they went out from. So, and it gave us a workshop as well for the vehicles and storage. It was a big place. So we grabbed that and it was good. The petrol side of things didn't really interest me. There's no money in petrol, despite what people might think today, but there was no money in petrol at the time. But we did it, and it was great for a while. And everything was going great, and then suddenly we found that where we were supplying one of the backpackers, he'd taken a deal with a newcomer in town who'd bought a load of ex-army Land Rovers. Well, some of them were pretty tired. And as I said to him at the time, you'll have problems. You won't get repeat. You won't get anyone going up and down the coast, any backpackers saying, go to this place because they've got great vehicles. They will die and you'll be in trouble. But he didn't listen to me. So we proceeded to look for somewhere ourselves. And the guy that owned the barges and the island resort, the Huron Beach Resort, Sid Melcham, he came to see me and he said, listen, there's a big motel coming up for grabs down at Urangan, which is at the other end of town. And if I buy it, are you interested in running it as a backpackers? And I thought, well, this is a bit of a strange arrangement, but I said, certainly. He said, well, look, the auction's in about a fortnight's time. We'll make sure we're there, eh? I said, yeah, okay, Sid. Now, Sid had ruled Fraser Island for some years. He was Mr. Fraser Island. And you didn't cross him, because if you did, he would get quite angry. But that's another story. The auction came up. But before that, we had what's called the King Tide. And the King Tide brought the waves ashore and through the bottom half of the motel. It was on a tiered piece of land, and half of the motel units were on the bottom part and the other half on the top part. Well, the top part didn't get wet at all, but the bottom part got about a metre of water through the bottom of them. So Sid said, it's not a goer. So we didn't get that one. But time went on and we found somewhere else. And we found a place that we could lease ourselves and fill with backpackers. And we did. And that was called the Olympus Backpackers. And that was great. It was some quality units that we divided up into different sections and different apartments and so on and so on. But that went very well for quite a while. And everything went great for quite some time, a number of years. And then we got an opportunity to retire from that. We'd done it for 10 years, 10 years of 18-hour days and worrying about everything that happened on Fraser Island. And lots of things did happen on Fraser Island. We had rollovers, we had people taking the boats for the cars for a swim, and so on and so on. But I also obtained the franchise at the new multi-million-dollar resort on the western side of the island called Kingfisher Bay. So we had to put staff in there and some vehicles. They didn't want troop carriers. They wanted Discoveries, Land Rover Discoveries. So that's what we did. We put some Land Rover Discoveries in there and a good staff member to run it, and that was going real good as well. And we had a really good 10 years out of Fraser Island, but everything comes to an end, and eventually we did, and we moved on, and we went. Now we were free for the first time in God knows how long. We went for a tour around England and Europe. Our daughter had never met some of her English relatives, so that's what we did. And we spent 2 years over there. I'd always liked Spain, and we spent some time in southern Spain, in Marbella, and it was very nice. And I think if I could have found something to do, to bring the money in, I would have. But it seemed like everything was being done, and what wasn't being done couldn't be done because the Spanish departments wouldn't let it happen, and they were very strange with certain things. But anyway, after 2 years, we decided, hey, let's go back to Australia. But just before we did, we got burgled in the night on a Sunday night, and that was a bit of a shock, you know. When you come downstairs and the French windows and the French doors are open and the wind's blowing the curtains, and anyway, needless to say, it didn't get a lot, but it's not a nice feeling to be burgled while you're in bed. But we then made a quick booking for a flight back to Australia, and we'd lived in Adelaide and we'd lived in Queensland, and we thought, well, let's have a look at WA. We'd heard so much about Western Australia. So we flew into Western Australia, managed to rent a place fairly quickly, and I bumped into someone that I'd known from way back in the past, who was the manager for a Jeep dealership. So he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm not doing anything right now. Why? What you got in mind? He said, well, why don't you come and sell some Jeeps for us? I said, sounds good to me. And that's what I did. I went and sold Jeeps. And that was good. It was something I'd never done, but I knew a little bit about four-wheel driving, I think, after 10 years of doing it. So I sold Jeeps for a while, and then I realised that Perth as a city didn't have a certain thing that I liked the idea of, and that was an auction house. Now, I'd done a bit of wheeling and dealing in auctions when I was over in the UK. So I tried to find a decent premises, and I applied for a particular management job as a auctioneer. So to get your auctioneer's ticket, you have to go to court. First time in my life I've been to court, but I went, and that was an education. And I got my auctioneer's license, and we opened an auction house. It was selling chattels, everything but cars. We didn't want to sell cars, and we sold furniture, and we sold machinery, and everything electrical, and that was great. And I loved being up on the rostrum, the lectern, selling the stuff, and that was great for me. But along came GST. Now, GST put a whole new light on everything, because working out what was bound for GST and what wasn't easy. So I decided after a while of employing an extra staff member to do all this bloody paperwork, that we'd get out of this as well. And we'd also realised that daughter was coming up to finishing high school, and she wanted to go to university in Queensland. So that's what we did. We headed off over to Queensland and started again. And our daughter went to university and qualified as a Bachelor of Education with English and drama. And she's been drama ever since. But that's another story. But no, she's been a good girl. And we went back to doing what we were best at, and that's selling things. My wife's an upholsterous machinist, so she got work very easily with the machine at home and working from home. And you know, there's never any chance of being unemployed or out of work. Most of my life I've worked for myself in one thing or another, and nothing changes. So we found ourselves doing okay again, and it just ticks along. And she went to university and qualified for that, and then she had to. One of the things I missed out on was when she said she was going to university. I said, "So how are you going to work your way through university?" She said, "Well, I'm not working in any pubs like they usually do." So I said, "Okay." Now my daughter's a very good singer, so I said, "Look, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'll get some sound equipment, some karaoke equipment. We'll get a few shows, and what comes in from the shows is yours." Great, she said. And we did. And we had no problem in getting shows around pubs and clubs. And we did that for the 4 years she was going through uni. And then when she got out of uni, she went, "Thanks, Dad." And so me and my wife then said, "We'll do this. We'll do a bit of this." And we become friends with a lot of the people that came in. And it was great. It was a great way to earn a living. Seeing people enjoy themselves. And a lot of people grow because, you know, I've seen people come along to a show and you said to them, "Do you want to sing?" And they've gone, "Oh, no, not me." But within 6 weeks, they're up there singing. And within another 6 weeks, they're singing like champions. You know, they're just being on the stage, making a living doing it. But and we had some good singers, some really good singers. And above all else, we had some really good people that supported us. We had 5 gigs, 5 nights, and we did that, and the income was okay, the lifestyle was okay, we had our days free, and that's just what we did. It paid its way, and we did it for 22 years, and made a lot of friends. Some young, some old, but above all else, they were friends, and we loved that part of things. But then along came this COVID-19, and one morning I got a call from one of the venues, and he said, "Oh, Mick, it's such and such here. We're closing at lunchtime." Oh, right, okay. Told me the reason, COVID-19, they'd been instructed by the government to close all hotels and anywhere where people gathered. And then within a few minutes, the phone rang, and it was another venue. "Oh, Mick, it's such and such here. We're closing at lunchtime." Oh, there we go. Here we go. So we thought, well, this is good. So far, we've got 3 left, and I've no doubt they're going to ring, and there goes the phone again. "Oh, Mick, it's such and such here. We're closing at lunchtime." I thought, isn't this great? Isn't this great? So sure enough, within the morning, all 5 of our venues had rang me to say they'd closed. And one particular venue, I have to say, I hadn't met the manager. He only started a fortnight before. He'd come from another venue, and he said to me, he said, "Look, I've been in this business quite a few number of years, Mick, and I've just had to do the worst job I've ever had to do. And I said, what's that? He said, well, I've just had to lay off 22 people, mostly young, a lot of them single mothers or students, and they've suddenly found themselves without any income. And he got quite emotional, and that didn't sit well with me, he said. Anyway, I thanked him and wished him all the best, and off he went. But the government then started promising all sorts of things, relief for this and relief for that. And luckily, one of my singers, she worked in the government, or he worked in the government department that handled this sort of stuff. So I rang him up, and he said, I said, what's the system? He said, well, look, you'll have a lot of paperwork to do, and you may qualify and you may not, and you'll at the most get $750 a week. I said, well, that's not good enough, is it? He said, no. And not only that, if you choose to take that, what happens, this is March, what happens in August when they say it'll run till, and they decide not to renew it, but the pubs and clubs are still closed? I said, that's a good thing. He said to me, how old are you? I said, why? He said, well, how old are you? I said, I'm 70. He said, well, just apply for the pension. I said, I have to tell you, I'm reticent to do that. The reason is, I won't admit to myself or to anybody else that I'm a pensioner. Am I vain? Yes, I am. You betcha. But he said, Mick, how long have you been in Australia? I said, 45 years. He said, get your application in, you've paid your dues. And I did. And it was a bit of a job online, because they had so many hoops and loops you had to jump through. And if you didn't have the right numbers, you couldn't get past a certain point. Anyway, we managed to get a young fella on the phone from the department, and he helped us through it. And sure enough, we were qualified, as I thought it would anyway, for an Australian pension. And so we now get an Australian, and I'm a pensioner. I'm not ashamed to say that anymore, because I'm 75 now, and I'm not out, if you know what I mean. It's a strange thing. When you've always been used to working and looking after your family, and suddenly you don't do that. So I'm not sure which way we're going to go. But at this point in my life, I'm weighing up things, and I'm looking at starting a YouTube channel. Now, I did, when things started working again and people were moving around again, I rang a few retirement villages to see if I could go around and entertain the people, because I can sing, I think. And they said, oh, yes, we'd love you to come. You need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need one of these, and you need one of these. I said, hang on. I'm not going to charge you for this. This is a freebie. It doesn't matter. You can't come into retirement homes if you haven't had these injections and you don't have this thing from the government. I said, thank you very much. So needless to say, I didn't do it. So we continued doing a little bit of what my wife does. She's an upholsterer, as I say. And we did a little bit of upholstery to just help things along with the pension as retired pensioners. And but now I'm getting a bit, now I'm going to start a YouTube channel where I might sing a couple of songs, and then I'll tell you all about the singers, all the little quirks they had, what they've done with their lives before and after, and if some of them are still alive, because like me, they'll be getting on if they are. So for now, that's my intention. I need a little bit of help from my daughter because she's a bit more tech savvy than me. So we're going to get the YouTube up and running, and I've got a little sound system that I can sing off, and I'm going to sing a couple of songs, tell you all about them, all about the singer, and post it on my YouTube channel, and it'll be a bit of fun, and you'll find I do have a good sense of humour. Some of it might not be approved by YouTube, but I'll do my best to keep it within their legitimate rounds, you know, so that they can't cut us off, because I believe they do cut you off if you don't do the right thing by them. So I'll intend to just keep everything above board and within their rules and regulations, and I look forward to you joining us. So for now, I thank you very much, and it's me, Mick 75, not out. Thank you.